Andy, first of all, let's look back, shall we? Your thoughts on the defeat against Pontypridd Town Women last Sunday?
Well, I was hoping it was going to be better news and we were going to be sitting here talking about 3 points. But yeah, unfortunately, as you say, we're talking about a defeat. That's hard to take. It's been, a long journey, a hard slog for 10, 12 weeks getting to where we got to at the weekend. There was lots of emotion, there was lots of expectation, and I just think on the day that got the better of us in a very, very tight game. I think if we'd have been more relaxed and played with greater freedom and greater sort of level of expression of our own ability, then things might have been different. So I guess in terms of who we are as a group and where we're going, that's something that we've got to consider. How do we get to that relaxed state of flow where we're giving our best? Because I think when you look at the game back, which we've probably all done by now, is that we didn't play to our level. And we know that in this league, we're going to have to play to our level if we want to be competitive. So all in all, great to get the first game out of the way, disappointed with the defeat, but it's a good baseline for us and we know where we've got to get to moving forward.
And before you travel to Barrytown United ladies on match day 2, there will be training sessions. How much of that training and preparation on the pitch will be devoted to perhaps putting things right that you didn't like last weekend, as opposed to then maybe focusing on what you want to do this coming Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, the football programme itself is really difficult to balance because, as you say, we are still bringing this group together. We're trying to embed our style of play. We're trying to embed the principles of play. And it's very much 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So there is a lot of recovering and recapturing work that we've already done to try and embed that so it does become natural and it becomes second nature when we are playing. But yeah, we've got to have one eye to correcting some of the major issues that are not quite coming off during the game, because if we fail to prepare for those, then ultimately we're not helping ourselves moving forward. We're doing ourselves a disservice and there's potential for great damage within the game. So it's a big balancing act, really. I think proportionally it's probably 75% the former of trying to embed our principles, and probably 25% of the latter, which is let's look at what we need to correct from last week moving forward.
You've had numerous training sessions, 3 pre-season friendlies. Last weekend was the first competitive game though. Based on that, are you happy with the squad as it is at the moment? Or even if you'd have won that game, would you still always have one eye on potential new signings if and when they do become available?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really difficult question to answer in one sense, but in another sense, it's pretty straightforward. I think you've answered the question. Obviously, we've got big ambitions for this team, we've got big ambitions for the club, and we've got to position ourselves to maintain a foothold within the league to then progress up the league. So we know that having completed the first game now, what the standard is and where we can benchmark ourselves at and where we're going forward in the short term to then move to the longer term. So we were delighted last week to bring in a new signing. We brought in Caitlin Chapman from Stoke City. She's an under-19 Northern Ireland international. I think those people that were fortunate enough to watch the game at the weekend can see what quality she brings to the group straight away. She's got good athleticism. She's an intensely hard-working athlete and player. So we were delighted to secure her in time for the first game, and that's the type of quality that we need. We're going to need a little bit more athleticism, we're going to need a little bit more experience to help those inexperienced players at the moment understand what the standard of the league is.
With many of the teams based in South Wales itself, lots of travelling for the New Saints women. This weekend it's a 7-hour round trip, 3.5 hours there of course, and likewise on the way back home. There will be a coach though, so how much of a big plus is that in terms of preparation for those games that are on the road and involve lots of travel?
Yeah, we prefer to travel by air if we could, but obviously that's not a possibility. So the coach, obviously, we're truly grateful to the club for making sure that we've got that mode of transport, because it would be impossible for us to drive down in any other way for that game and to acquit ourselves to the standard that we need to. So the coach obviously is important. It gives the players time to relax, get some extra rest before we get there, etc., as well as the key bonding session, which is important for us, particularly for a team that's you know, in its infancy at the moment. So personally, I always look forward to away trips because it gives you a lot of thinking time, both you know, before the game in terms of game plans, key messages, but also on the reverse side, coming back and the reflection. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one, that's for sure.
And the opponent this weekend also lost their opening game of the league season. So both sides looking to get off the mark, lots at stake as far as that's concerned.
Absolutely, you know, that goes without saying. It's competition. Every team turns up, they want to win that game. Both teams are going to be probably doubly sort of prepared this week, trying to get something out of the game, whether that's 1 point or 3 points. Both teams will be resilient, they'll be competitive, they'll be determined. So, you know, we've got to make sure that we go into that with our eyes fully open and understanding, you know, if we feel we're a wounded animal, they also are a wounded animal. So nobody's going to give us anything again this week, we know that.
And what do you know about Barrytown United ladies? And in particular, based on that, what sort of challenge are you expecting on the pitch?
Well, they're a new team to the league as well, aren't they? Being promoted this season, so we know that they've got players and new signings that understand their way around this league, that's for sure. But beyond that, we know very little of them at the moment, other than it's quite clear that they're a really, really close-knit team, close-knit group, so they'll fight for each other, they'll work hard for each other, they'll be competitive, we know that.
And finally, Andy, what is the availability of players to you as you look ahead to the weekend?
We've got 1 or 2 niggles, walking wounded from last weekend. We've got 1 or 2 players coming back, which is good. As I said, we've just introduced Caitlin Chapman to the group as well. So moving forward this week, there will likely be 1 or 2 small changes that will be enforced upon us from last weekend, but nevertheless, you know, we trust in this group of players, we trust in them to come together to, you know, whether they're playing in position or out of position, whether they're starting or whether they're brought into the team during the game, to, you know, commit, give their best efforts and do their ultimate.